I'm not so sure about the legend bit, because aren't you supposed to be dead? So thank you for that very kind and flattering introduction. You'll see immediately there's no PowerPoint. And I never give a PowerPoint for these presentations because I have no idea what I'm going to say. And the reason for that is, what I want this to be is a discussion with you and me all the way to, so not I present something for however long it's going to go on for and you all fall asleep and then ask a polite question at the end. I want to have a discussion. I want you to ask questions. I want you to make comments. And if you do disagree, disagree. And we can have a full discussion about it, because I am not an expert. I am an expert. I'm an expert in ionic liquid chemistry. And if you would like to come and talk to me about that over tea, I will be very happy to bore you to tears. But in this area, all I am is somebody who found themselves being a head of department in a chemistry department at an appropriate time in history when people were starting to think about this kind of thing, and we did some stuff. And that's all I can tell you. I can tell you about the stuff that we did. I'm not a social scientist. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not anything like that, anyway. Right, so let's start with what we did, because I think, the thing I like about today's title is diversity interventions. It's, I could put up 100 slides telling you about, the leaky pipeline and a whole variety of studies telling us what's wrong. But, we really need to think about what we're doing. And the first thing, and again, this might seem strange to an audience like this, is having a reason to act. And, and in this conference, if I were to ask you, and I will in a minute, if I were to ask you about reasons to act, but I'll give you my anecdote first. We might talk about fairness, we might talk about various studies that have shown that, the boards of company, when the boards of companies are more diverse, the company, makes more money, has, rising stocks and shares, and la 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 la. What do I care? I'm an inorganic chemist. I have no interest in the shares of any company, except the ones for which my pension is invested in. And I don't know who they are. So anyway, so how we came to deciding to act is very, very simple. So I became head of department, and the first thing I did was, have a meeting with the Chemistry Advisory Board, which was made up of, a whole range of people from the chemicals industry, from the civil service, we're in London, so, the city, all of that. We had a meeting with them and presented the departmental strategy to be the best chemistry department in Europe. I did do a PowerPoint, it was very flashy. And at the end of it, they said, and so what's your business plan? To which I replied, what's one of them? And then we went through the process of building the business plan for the chemistry department's strategy. And the first thing that we had to ask was, how would you know if you were the best chemistry department in Europe? If you were to walk into the best chemistry, how would you tell? And then we thought, okay, well, the only way we can answer that question is to ask the department. And I think at several points along the way, you will hear me say, we asked people. And so we said to the department, how would you tell? Expecting answers like we would be the department that did nanobio, thingio, whatever, or, some kind of very technical answers. But that's not what we got. And so the department said that, the best chemistry department in Europe would be the place where the best and brightest chemists wanted to come to study, and the best and brightest chemists would want to come and work, and the funders would want to spend their money, because it all comes down to that in the end. But the best and brightest would want to come work with us. And then we just literally took a photograph of the staff. There wasn't a single non-white academic at the time. There was one woman professor. And we looked at that photograph literally looked at the photograph and said, do we believe that white men from the southeast of England are in some way naturally the best and brightest chemists that there could possibly be? Or are we failing at the task that we have set for ourselves? And of course it was the latter. And what that did, it was, the diversity was not a target in its own right. The diversity, or the lack of diversity, was the evidence that we were failing to achieve the thing that we had set for ourselves. And then that took diversity, as I said, it was in that point of history, people were talking, but it took diversity from something which was, oh, la, 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 diversity is important, la, 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 to actually being a reason to act, a reason for people in the department to take time out of their day to work on this. Because if we were to achieve what we wanted to achieve, to be the best chemistry department in Europe, with our definition of what that meant, we needed to work on diversity. And so we had a really powerful reason to act. And so my first question to you, and to people who are online, someone is monitoring the chat, and so if you put anything into the chat, it can be shouted at me. My first question to you is, what might be your I mean, you're here at this conference, so you've probably pretty committed, but what might be the kind of things that could be reasons to act and to do things? What would you suggest? I've got a cup of tea here, so I can wait. Down here. Oh, there's a microphone coming.
Thank you. So I work for the Oxford Biomedical Research Centre as a training and inclusion manager in public and community involvement. And I'll just leave it at that. And basically, I think the reason that we act is because we believe that patients get a better deal, they get better quickly, they get more, they get interventions which work if we include and ask and work with them to guide the research and to do the research, to take part in the research. And I think COVID-19 has very nicely demonstrated that for us with the vaccine.
Yeah, so it enables your research to be more profound, to be better, to be, it needs to be of a diverse, I'm going to say the word client group, I don't know what the right word is, a diverse client group. And you need to reflect that and be patient. Yeah, so it can be really about, it gets embedded in what you do. What else? Oh, you are all quiet. Down here.
I don't have to wait for the microphone. I can talk to you like this.
Okay, but the people online won't be able to hear you. But on the other hand, I can always repeat the...
Sure. I'm Calvin Morley. I'm a nursing professor with a chair in diversity and social justice. And I think it's interesting, the concept of diversity, but do we need to go beyond the diversity and actually start? The reason why we act is because, yes, people are different and diverse, but it's at those intersectional points we meet and the intersections of someone that may make them even look more different and alien to the normative group.
Yeah, I mean, we were all multidimensional beings, aren't we? And, I'm here standing at, an Athena Swan meeting, which is, mostly, I would say, not entirely about gender diversity. I find myself standing as a, pink sweatshirted LGBT plus champion at those meetings. In a minute, I probably will sit down because I'm also disabled. We are all multidimensional beings. And I've always thought that actually, that's why that's why I like that's why I don't like the list. I always call it the list, you know, and sort of, oh, today we're doing gender, and then, oh, tomorrow we'll do race, and on next Friday we're going to have a thing on, you know, and it's just like, really? Is it about, and of course the only discussion then becomes, as we see in the news here in the UK at the moment, when you start having a list approach, the discussion becomes who's on and off the list, rather than getting on and doing stuff. And all of us are unique individuals, and everybody, even the members of the most normative group, everybody deserves to be treated with respect. Everybody deserves to be treated with openness. And when necessary, everybody needs to be treated with compassion. And if our management systems took those as their guiding principles, I'm not saying the world's problems would go away, but they would be a lot easier to deal with, and the workplace would be a much fairer place than it is today. So, yeah, I think we're all multidimensional, and every single one, you know, no matter what we look like, there's other stuff going on too. And so I think you're quite right. I think that we really do need to challenge ourselves when thinking in the very kind of listy way that often diversity can be talked about. There's a hand at the back.
Yeah, hi, Colin Lark with the clinical support worker over at the Gender Institute in Oxford. You know, you asked what might be the reasons to act and do. From my standpoint, as an autistic person within the room here, maybe the only one, I don't know, for me, it's about coming together and actually looking at how we can move forward proactively in a way whereby it's not just, like a colleague of mine just said, a tick box exercise. We're actually doing things that make a positive difference instead of waffle, you know, and you know, it's so important, and that's for every university, every workplace. It doesn't matter where you are, what country you're in, that doesn't matter. What matters is we move forward progressively and in the right direction, not 50 years backwards.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's really, it's a challenge. Actually, do you know, I was going to come to this much later. I'll come to it now. You know, it's a challenge that we can all take part in. And this was a big part of what we did in the chemistry department at Imperial. Is, yes, there's the stuff about policies and procedures and all the kind of formalities and all of those things that, you know, I can talk about in a bit. But actually, the thing that really made a difference was spreading the notion that everybody in the department, regardless of their position, had a role to play, and that everybody in the department could tomorrow make the department a little bit more inclusive than it was yesterday. And of course, some people, heads of department, have big levers to pull and they should pull them. But some people, you know, the greatest reach they had was to the other side of the bench that they did their research at, or the other side of the desk that they worked at. And that was the extent of their reach. But that it was incumbent upon them to use that reach. And, you know, a very small example was, you know, in the administration corridor. So when I started as head of department, every door on that corridor was shut. You'd walk down it, it was silent. And one of the things that changed at the same time that I changed, and so I can't, you know, claim the benefit, well, I don't claim the benefit for all of it, was the departmental administrator changed at the same time that I changed. And you know, the previous departmental administrator had led what you would call a blame culture. Now, this, you know, it wasn't particularly to do with diversity in any kind of way, but it was to do with how you treat people. And the new head of the new departmental administrator came in, Eileen. She was, you know, she is wonderful. And she started the process of giving people the confidence that they knew that change needed to happen and that they could be agents of that change. And so she would sit, and I would sit with her, and we would say, look, if you haven't made 3 mistakes by lunchtime, you're not trying hard enough. And, you know, what you need to do is, when you realize that, you know, you're trying to do something in a new way and it was a mistake and it's gone wrong, you know, come and see us. We can always go back to the old way, or we can always fix what the problem is if something has gone wrong. And we can start thinking about, you know your job better than I know your job. If you think there's a way of doing it a bit better, do it a bit better. And it took a while, because, trust needed to be built up, and we would do, well, I just thought they were very human things, like walking into people's offices each day and saying, oh, hi, how are you? And walking through the department. I would very deliberately, I had an office down one end of a very long, thin building at that time, and I would deliberately use the fire entrance at that end of the building. So I had to walk, every time I left the building, every time I arrived in the building, I had to walk through the building in order to get to my office. And I would just very cheerily say, oh, morning, good morning, hiya, or in the evening, bye, have a nice evening, as I walked through the building. And as I walked through that corridor. It took about 6 months before you would walk down that corridor and every door on that corridor was open. And there was noise. People weren't sitting silently in their little corner. And most importantly, what had started to happen was, of course, with all of those jobs, the exams secretary, there were times when she was hugely busy. And there were exams going on, there's stuff to be done, really, really, really busy. And there were times when actually her workload was much less. And what had used to happen was, when her workload was less, she'd be sitting there. And when she was busy, she'd be... But what started to happen was, as we opened up, people just started helping each other. Really, it's just so bloody simple. And so when she was really, really busy, somebody who was less busy at that time would help her with her stuff. And when it was in the quiet time for her, she would help people with what they were busy on. And, and that had two effects. One, it made the corridor so much nicer to be on. Just having that air to it. It also meant that the administration of the department was more effective, so the business part of that business plan was met. But it also meant that the whole of that section was just more welcoming. And I often say, where does inclusion start? Inclusion starts with the welcome. And if you do not do the welcome, you cannot get inclusion. And so again, I was going to come to this later, but, to you. So not thinking at the moment about, policies and that kind of stuff. But what kind of things, in your own organisation, what kind of things could you go and do today that tomorrow would make your place of work more inclusive than it was yesterday? And I can see you've got a hand here.
I think my point is already covered, but my point was like...
Can you put the microphone closer?
Yeah.
There we go.
So because every individual is different. If we all think in that way, they have their own way of thinking. And no thinking is innovative or less innovative. So every individual will add a value, and diversity adds that thinking, because every individual groups also have a different way of thinking. So if we will have a more diverse thing, your objective of getting a best department will always be taken care.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was. So that, that advisory panel, as I said, had people from the chemical industry, it had people from the city, had people from the civil service. You'll have noticed what it didn't have was professors at other highly esteemed chemistry departments. The previous version, well, I was director of teaching before I was head of department. The previous version of that committee did. It was, you know, you'd go to these, oh, they were just so turgid. You'd have these day-long meetings where you would meet with professors from similar kinds of chemistry departments, so not even a range of chemistry departments, and you would all sit around and share your common experience. And everything that I knew, they knew, I knew. Everything I didn't know, they didn't know. And, you know, so absolutely what diversity really can do is can bring into the room stuff I don't know. And then I can take advantage of stuff I don't know. I can take advantage of experiences that I've not had in order to make the place a better place to do the thing that it is intended to be, which is to be the best chemistry department in Europe. I do think we're the best chemistry department in Europe, by the way. You know, so yes, bringing in that range of skills and experiences that different backgrounds brings you is a huge advantage that diversity has to come. I think that one of the things you do have to be a bit careful about with it, though, is you can just throw a bunch of dissimilar people into a room, fold your arms and say, all right, get on with it, and watch it not work. You know, in and of itself, you know, we have all of these interventions, and none of them on their own do anything. It is that there is a broad program of work, and that you think, oh, hang on, I'm bringing people into a room who have not been in this kind of room before. You know, are they going to be comfortable in this room? Are they going to sit in silence waiting for me to speak? Are they, you know, there's all sorts, you know, so an unmanaged diverse room is just as ineffective as an unmanaged non-diverse room. What you have to do, you have to manage it, you have to think. You have to think that what I have done is I've brought someone into a situation where actually they might not be feeling comfortable. You know, how do I welcome them? How am I inclusive? And God, the trick's in the word. You know, what you have to do is you have to actively include people. Not just have, I think, you know, many people in this room might well have had the experience where you know you were dragged into the room because you were the person that made the photograph look right. That's why and you sit there and you think, I know why I'm here, and it is a total waste of my time. That has to not be true. So you have to actively manage it. And I would say, you know, and well, I do say, there's a word for good management for diversity. Oh, it's called good management. There's a hand here.
I was just wanting to feed back some of the points from online, and they've echoed a lot of similarities. So there's been a lot of chat about just the moral case for it, of being important, and kind of social justice, but also that kind of it's where excellence comes from, so kind of getting a diverse group, and around leadership as well. And then we've also had a comment around building inclusive community, and a sense of belonging, and kind of the new challenge of the hybrid world that we're working in, so the kind of online, offline, and people kind of grappling with kind of what that looks like in practice. But yeah, just wanted to bring some of those online chat voices into the room as well.
And so I think there are, so, you know, one last thing on the reasons to act. And so it was, I don't know, I think it would still be true. I think it would still be true. But the most effective way I saw time and time again of getting a recalcitrant senior male colleague to act was for their daughter to go to university. It was shocking that they did not care that their wives were being treated that badly. They did not care that their sisters were being treated that badly. But actually, when their daughters went into the system, you could see people just, it was the Christmas after their daughter's first year at university, the scales had been removed from their eyes. But it's about that. It's about finding a truly personal reason to do it? Why will this person dedicate time to dealing with this? And there is only one way you can do that, and that is to listen really, really carefully. Because this person's personal driver is very different to that person's personal driver. There's a hand over there.
Just before you leave the reasons to act, Tom, good morning. People mostly have been talking, as you're encouraging us to do, to think about the normative, the ethical, the moral, the good reasons to act, a little bit what we might call the business case, that horrible term, but actually being the best chemistry department, etc. There's a benefit to it. There is also a reality that there are costs to change. And so another reason to act is that the regulators and the statutory bodies require you to. And I just wonder your thoughts about that is part of the story here.
Yeah, and I think absolutely, you know, and in this kind of global network, you know, different organizations and different people, you know, you have, I talked about reach and your responsibility to choose your reach. You know, if you're UKRI, you know, you have interventions that you can make into this system that can have a positive impact on diversity. They will be different from the interventions that, although might overlap with, in some extent, with the interventions a head of department of a chemistry department. But it is important that you work out your place in the system and then act appropriately. There are, so there were, you know, so doing a Sally Davis, as we call it here, you know, so it was great. I mean, so, you know, she was at the front of a meeting and she said, yeah, the NIHR have these centres, and she said, you're not getting one of these centres unless you have an Athena Swan Silver Award. There you go, done. And it did. I mean, we saw the graph, didn't we? We saw the graph. It, you know, it has had hugely positive impacts. But it also has had some negative impacts as well. You know, I've spoken to medics in my own institution, friends, you know, and they say, yeah, it's just a tick box exercise. All it is about making sure that you've ticked enough boxes to get the award so that you can get the money. Nobody really believes it. So where is it in between this, you know, the most wonderful intervention that could possibly happen to this thing that actually, you know, didn't have any real, you know, and of course the answer is it's somewhere in between, and it's in different places in different places. And I think it has, you know, it has huge, huge value because one, it does get the attention of senior management. It also, it enables people who wanted to be able to make change in their organization to find something that they can use to get the organization to act. And, you know, it's not hijacking because actually it's doing the thing that Sally wanted done. But, you know, to just get the whole thing moving. And it was hugely powerful, and it has had a hugely positive effect. But there will be places, there will be, you know, departments and schools in which it was just a tick box exercise done in some room by some people who wrote an application very cleverly in order to get the award. The world's not a perfect place. And, you know, I've always been a believer in, you know, doing what you can do, making sure that you have made it, you know, your intervention is to push it forward. It might not be to push it forward as far or as fast as you might want it to go, but, you know, you can use that ammunition, and working out what ammunition you have is, you know, an important part of working out what intervention is going to make it, you can do, and what intervention can make a difference. Oh, there was something from online. I've now forgotten what it was that I was going to comment on. Oh, about the online offline, about the very thing. Oh, so we'll do the online offline because it's part of the answer. So I've now found myself in the position of, you know, chairing lots of mixed meetings. And, you know, again, it's that don't just do it. You've got to think about it. And you know, done it a bit, and then I saw someone else do it. And so there is there's a two-class thing going on here. There's the people who are in the room, can attract my eye, and then there are the people who can't. And so doing things like saying, what's the online thing? So making sure that you include the online people. And what this person did, which was just like, oh God, I'd never thought about it. Every time he just said, and we'll go to the people online first. And so you welcome them into the room, you include them in the room. And of course, why it matters is because what we have seen with online conferences is the diversity of an online conference is far, far greater than the diversity of the people in the room conferences. And so it matters for diversity. It matters that you take those people who are a more diverse audience and you take them first and you bring them in. And so, come back to you. But as we struggle through this new world, what will happen is, if we do not think about it carefully, the consequences of that diverse audience being the diverse audience will mean that they will become more and more and more disadvantaged. And it will be so privileged to be in the room that we will give the people in the room such a better class of, and I think I do mean the word class of experience, that who are the people in the room? They're the people who can afford to be there. They are a very privileged group. They probably come from very privileged institutions because their institution or their funding has provided them the money to be there. And we do have to really, really watch that, because it is a real possibility that there will be just a totally two-tier system. But simple, small interventions, that's the point. It's not that you have to try and change the world. Just remembering to say, oh, there were some questions online. What's in the chat? And I think that that's really we're not going to get onto policies and procedures because we've talked about culture. That's what we've actually talked about. And making sure that the culture is welcoming to the people who are coming in via a camera.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Chama Awasthi. I'm representing Government of India, and we have initiated one pilot, Gati, and that is the area where we started. We are new. And the experience we have gained so far was there are scientists involved in the initiative, and they have expressed that they are already overloaded, and this is the additional work. How do you think that we should tackle those situations? And sometimes what happens when they have the committee or team, and most of them are women, very few male are there in the team, and that too the work which needs so much hard work is given to the females. And so what are your thoughts on this problem?
Okay, so again, I can tell, it is a huge problem. And the work associated with broadening the diversity of our organisations falls upon the underrepresented groups again and again and again and again. And there are ways of dealing with that. So you can be very insistent that, and there have been times when I've done that and I've said, no, the Athena Swan champion's a man, thank you very much, I don't care. You can do it that way. The other way to do it is, again, it's about management. It is about saying, okay, here are some tasks that need to be performed. The department needs these tasks to be performed. Remember, because these are the tasks that have to be performed in order to make us be the success, given our definition of success. Therefore, I have to treat them like any other management task, which is, okay, so you're working on the Athena Swan Committee. So, do you know what? You're not doing second marking. Allocation of tasks by the senior. It's why senior management buy-in is so important, because those are the things that really make the difference. It is actually, yes, this is hard work. Work needs to be done. I can't pretend that it's not. But what I can do is I can take other tasks away from you, not research-related tasks that are going to advance your career, which is what will suffer if I don't manage it. But there are lots of administrative tasks that we all take part in every day in our lives within academia. You don't do the other ones. And so that is actually how you do it. You manage the workflows.
Hi, Ross Woods, Higher Education Authority Ireland, and just wanted to go back to that point about the regulatory piece, because that's basically my role, is directing national policy. We've linked Athena Swan in Ireland to so we've gone where it's changed here in the UK. We've gone in the other direction and linked Athena Swan to research funding, and obviously everyone now is completely committed at university and school level to get Athena Swan Awards. But what I would say from that national level is that some of the moral and ethical arguments that are being made, we can't wait for those arguments to take hold. So, and whereas people in institutions on a day-to-day basis have to manage those relationships, I think at a national level you need to be a bit firmer in how you go about that. And I suppose the key reason we would give is, and going back to the previous point, is the law. There's lots of laws outside of university legislation that actually universities and departments need to comply with. And that's one of the approaches that we take, is that we try to help the staff on the ground leverage the knowledge that we have of what they should be doing. Now, it's not as, say, touchy-feely as the making people feel good about themselves because they love their fellow human beings, but it can sway those senior male academics who don't have daughters going to college, and so on. But I think that the other thing that we do, that we promote, is, I suppose, this idea that universities and schools and departments don't exist in a vacuum. They are part of society, and they're a very important part of society. And there's a role for universities to show thought leadership in this area. So it's the other stick that we have, reputational damage. But also on the flip side of that, you can improve your reputation. Like, think of the reputation of the School of or the Department of Chemistry for having a gold award, and so.
So yeah, so I think I agree with you completely, and it's about carrots and sticks, isn't it? And even if we go right back to the when Julia Higgins and Doc Griffiths and Athene Donaldson were in a room saying, how the hell are we going to get universities to do something about this? What they did is have you ever wondered why you have gold, silver and bronze? They said, turn it into a competition. If you turn it into the competition, vice-chancellors around the country will start saying there's a competition, therefore we want to win it. And it was a reason to act. It was, let's make it be a competition. And that can take you, it did. Wonderful, we're sitting here because of that conversation that those women had. It takes you so far, and then there are other things to start bringing into play. And it is about carrots and sticks. There are some things, and and I would say this to any, whether I'm talking to a regulator in education or whether I'm talking to a regulator in, chemicals in the environment, which I do as well. It's working out which things you want stick and which things you want carrot. When do you want an aspiration? When do you want a target? And whether you're a national regulator or whether, again, you are a single department thinking about, its first Athena Swan application, some things at different times and in different places will be different. Some things will be better managed by carrot, and some things will be better managed by stick. And, it's your job to work out, in the place that I am today, what's the balance of carrot and stick? And next year, when the situation has changed, the balance might change. And in a different place, the balance will be different because they're in a different place. And, that's why right at the beginning I said, I don't have broad sweep answers for you because it's complicated and difficult. But it is about that balance.
Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Picking up on what this lady was saying about the smaller the diversity, the narrower the viewpoint, going back to step one, the hiring of people in the first place, what are your feelings about blank CVs, so CVs without names or genders or ages on them? Because the unconscious bias we all have, whether that's race or age or gender or parenting or anything like that, can have a real effect on who you see.
Absolutely. What I can tell you from our, the CDT in RAW. What does RAW mean? I can't remember. Anyway, from one of our CDTs, I can absolutely tell you, in their first year, they did not anonymise the CVs. In their second year, they did. And there was a material difference in the diversity of the recruitment. Yeah, it worked. So I can tell you that. I think that in and of itself, that's not enough. You need to... So we have a concept that we use across the whole of Imperial College, which is called Know Your Pool. And this comes from, so we're a, science, medicine and engineering place. And the diversity of the pool of applicants for a life sciences course is very different to the diversity of potential applicants for a physics course. So for a life sciences course, I should be saying, 50-50, absolutely. Oh, 5 minutes left, okay. So we might have time for one last question. But in a physics, it's unrealistic, because there isn't the candidates to make that. So what we don't do is say our expectation is in the short term, you will have a 50-50 gender balance in your recruitment for, the master's course on this or the, What we say is, you have to be able to justify us with information and, and knowledge, the facts, that this is what your pool looks like. And so what you're recruiting to now should look like your pool. And so you kind of, as it were, you plug the leaky pipeline in its various different places by saying, actually, there shouldn't be a drop-off here. That's your target. The long-term aspiration is eventually that will lead to, 50-50 for everything. But the short-term target is that you do not generate a leak in the thing that you're doing. And so we find that very effective. But also know your pool means know your pool. Go out and meet it. Go out and find it. Go out and recruit from it. Not from just your normal networks, but really go out there and make sure that you are sampling the whole of that pool. What I have to say for academic recruitments is, wow, when we started doing that, the quality of the shortlists it just went up and up and up as you're recruiting for, an academic permanent position. And, you go to the, we know all sorts of organisations have these fellowships. You actively go to that list of fellowships and you contact anybody on that list who's a potential applicant for the job that you've got. We are in the process of recruiting 10 people. My CV, when I arrived at Imperial College, would not have got me on the shortlist, let alone recruited. And so it has that double effect. It means that you've gone out and you've found people. You've not waited passively and said, oh, but none of them applied. You've gone out and you've found people and you've encouraged them to apply. They are better applicants. You get better recruits and you will go on to becoming the best chemistry department in Europe. And so work at it. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. It's probably not what you expected the session to be like, but it makes it so much more interesting than me just waffling on, doesn't it? Thank you.